If you are a digital marketer or digital analyst and you want to implement analytics and marketing code much faster, for example, Google Analytics 4, then Google Tag Manager is exactly what you need. But how to get started? How to properly create your first setup without wasting too much time looking for the right learning resources? In this video, I will show you exactly that. We will learn how to get started with Google Tag Manager and how to install Google Analytics 4 with it. But before we continue, I have two more things. If you want to learn more about how to get started with Google Tag Manager, I have published a free ebook which is called Google Tag Manager for Beginners. In that ebook, you will find some additional tips that are not mentioned in this video. So if you want to learn more, click the link below the video and download that ebook. Also, if you want to learn more about Google Tag Manager and Google Analytics, then subscribe to this channel. Alright, so let's dive in.
So, what is Google Tag Manager? The best way to explain that is to show an example. Here's your company, or maybe that's your client's company, and that company has multiple websites. In order to measure the effectiveness of those websites and how do they contribute to the overall goal of the business, those companies usually use tools like Google Analytics or Google Ads or something else. And that's where you as a marketer or analyst join the game, because you will be the one who will be using those tools. And in order to get some data into, let's say, Google Analytics, you need to add tracking codes to those websites. And in the older days, the only way to do that was to ask a developer. And since developers are quite busy and they have their own priorities, tracking codes are somewhere at the end of the list of those priorities. That's why usually it takes days, weeks, sometimes even months to implement those tracking codes for a developer. And that's where Google Tag Manager becomes very useful, because in many cases, you can add those tracking codes to the website by yourself. Of course, keep in mind that Google Tag Manager was never meant to replace developers fully, and the best results are achieved when you work together with Google Tag Manager and with a developer. But with GTM, there are many cases where you can actually implement tracking codes on your own. And all of that is possible through the interface of Google Tag Manager. So let's take a quick look at the overall idea of how Google Tag Manager works. You have a website and then you install, or your developer installs Google Tag Manager on a site. So what you can do right now is to configure Google Tag Manager to keep looking for certain interactions on a page, like clicks, conversions, form submissions, something else. And if those interactions occur, Google Tag Manager can be configured to send that particular data to your other tools that you're using, for example, Google Analytics or Google Ads. So in other words, Google Tag Manager is a middleman between your website and other tools. And I'm not talking about just Google products like Google Analytics. You can also send data to platforms like Facebook Pixel, Hotjar, or anything else. So in the older days, this part was controlled by a developer. Now, in many cases, you can do that by yourself with Google Tag Manager. But I would like to emphasize this once again, that you should not try to eliminate developers completely with Google Tag Manager. There will be many cases where you will be able to achieve things on your own, but in some cases you will still have to rely on developers, because if you combine developers' input with Google Tag Manager and your input, you will achieve the best results. Now let's have a quick overview of Google Tag Manager benefits. First of all of the tracking codes are controlled in one place. This is useful and this is convenient, because if you want to change something, you know that the codes that you want to change are stored in one place, and that is Google Tag Manager's interface. Then you will be less dependent on your IT department. Of course, as I've mentioned before, there will be some cases where developers' input is necessary, but in situations like click tracking, form tracking, in most cases you will be able to achieve things on your own. Then the time to implement those tracking codes is much faster. Because if you had to ask a developer to implement those codes, you had to wait weeks, maybe days, sometimes even months. But in this case, you can launch your tracking codes on the same day. Of course, if you know Google Tag Manager well enough. Google Tag Manager is a very popular platform, and that popularity still continues to grow. So what does it mean is that there are many resources and many places where you can learn Google Tag Manager. For example, Analytics Mania is one of them. Google Tag Manager is free. Of course, there is an enterprise version, but that one is needed only for very large companies. And if you are, let's say, small or medium business, you can definitely work with the free version, because it still is very flexible and powerful. Then there are tag templates. So what does it mean is that in many cases, you will not need to work directly with JavaScript. You can just enter your account ID, maybe some other additional information, and Google Tag Manager will do the rest and will send that information to other tools. So the tool is quite friendly for non-developers, but of course it is not as easy to learn as you might think, and there will be definitely a learning curve. Then Google Tag Manager offers auto event tracking functionality. So what does it mean? That you can track certain interactions with the built-in functionality in GTM, like clicks, scrolling, YouTube video interactions, when an element appears on the screen, and so on. If the auto event tracking capabilities do not work in a certain case, then you can find some custom functionalities that are provided by various members in the GTM community. Multiple members of the team can work in Google Tag Manager container at the same time. There are workspaces, there are versions. So for example, if you publish your changes and something goes wrong, you can revert to the previous version. Also, you can limit permissions of your employees or your colleagues or partners or whatever. So if you don't trust someone enough to give them all the permissions to the container, you can limit them just to edit, but not publish, for example. And finally, there is a helpful community. For example, we have a group on Facebook. There's also official Google Tag Manager forum created by Google. There are some chats on Slack. And I mean, there are many places where you can discuss and get help or help others to work with Google Tag Manager. So that was a quick overview of the idea behind Google Tag Manager. Basically, it is a middleman between your website and other tools. If you want to track certain interactions and send data to those tools, you can do that with Google Tag Manager. Google Tag Manager does not replace tools like Analytics or Google Ads. It is just a way to send data from your website to those tools. So in other words, GA and GTM are not competitors. They work best if you combine them together. In further videos, I will show you how to create your first setup, how to make sure that it's working, and how to publish those changes live.
First, let's create a Google Tag Manager account and container. To do that, go to google.com/tagmanager. And you will see a page that looks something like this. Even if it looks a bit different for you, just keep looking for a button that says Start for free. Click it, and then you will see different view depending on whether you have an account or not. So if you are completely new to Google Tag Manager and you never had access to any Google Tag Manager container, you will see a view like this. And if you already have at least one Google Tag Manager container, a view might look something like this. In that case, click Create Account, and you will be redirected right here. Now let's create a Google Tag Manager account. Here you can enter your company's name. Just for sake of demonstration purposes, I can enter something like GTM course. Then you can choose your country. You can decide whether you want to share data anonymously with Google. And then you can enter the container name. In this case, you don't have to enter the URL right here. It can be just a simple word or several words. For example, blog, support website, main website, something like that. Or, of course, you can enter the domain. From what I have seen, in most cases, people are creating one container for one website. Therefore, you can, of course, enter here the domain of the site. But right now, we can enter GTM course website. In this course, we will be focusing on the web container. Therefore, choose this one and click Create. Speaking of other types of containers, this one is for iOS apps. This one is for Android apps. This one is for accelerated mobile pages, also known as AMP. And then this one is for server-side Google Tag Manager implementation. But this one is definitely advanced, and we are not going to talk about server-side tracking in this course. So click Create. Then you will need to agree with terms of service. And then you will see a pop-up like this. Now Google Tag Manager is asking you to add both of these codes to your website. For now, let's close this and we will get back in upcoming lessons. Before we continue, first let's take a look at the structure of Google Tag Manager account. Here you have a Google account. Now this account is designed to help you access all of the Google products like Google Analytics, Google Ads, Gmail, YouTube, or anything else. When on Google Tag Manager website, you click Start for free, and then you were logged into Google Tag Manager interface, you are actually using your Google account. Then, when we logged into Google Tag Manager, we were asked to create a new Google Tag Manager container. Now, the best practice is to have one Google Tag Manager account per business. So if you are a business that has 5 websites, you should have one Google Tag Manager account, and within that account, you could have multiple containers. Usually one container is for one website. Of course, let's say if you have 5 very identical websites and the only thing that differs is the language, then you could have one container for all 5 websites.
but in most cases, it makes more sense to have one container for one website. So if you have a main website, blog, support page, something else, then each website could have a different container. Why different container? Because in that container, we will be having tags, triggers, and variables. Now, I will talk about them a bit later, but basically your tracking codes will be held in that container. And usually tracking codes are different for each website. Therefore, it makes sense to have a separate container for every website. Before we continue, here's a quick disclaimer. Google Tag Manager is an ever-evolving tool. So what does it mean? Is that Google is constantly updating the tool, adding new features, sometimes even changing the design. So there is a slight chance that the view that you're viewing in your browser will be different from the view that you see in my video. All right, so now we are in the container of Google Tag Manager. A container is a place where you keep all your stuff related to web tracking. So for example, if you want to implement Facebook Pixel, Google Analytics, Google Ads, all of those tracking codes are stored in a container. And when a visitor lands on a website, first Google Tag Manager is loaded. The container is loaded. And then from that container, various tracking codes are activated based on your conditions. In the top menu bar, we have three sections: workspace, versions, and admin. And right now we are in the workspace. So this is the section where you will be spending most of your time because that's where the actual work is happening. And on the left side, you will find sections like tags, triggers, variables, folders, and templates. Tags are basically tracking codes that you want to activate under certain circumstances. Triggers are those conditions that define when the tag should fire. And variables are usually little pieces of information that you can use in your setup, or maybe some little helper functions, but let's not focus on that right now. Then you can also keep things in order by having folders and keeping your tags, triggers, and variables in separate folders. This works pretty much the same as folders in your laptop. When you make some changes in a container and you want to test that, then you will need to click the preview button right here, and then we will enable the preview mode that allows us to test everything just within the boundaries of our browser. And when you make sure that everything is working fine as you expected, then you will need to publish the container. And that publishing process starts by clicking the submit button right here. When you click this, you will need to enter the version name. Now, this is optional, but I highly recommend that you enter some descriptive and brief name of a version. And we will do that a bit later in the course. When I explain how to do that. But now, here's a catch. When you create a new Google Tag Manager container without any tags, triggers, or variables or whatever, because you will see that all of those, let's say, triggers are empty. There are no triggers or tags. You still need to publish a container because otherwise the preview mode will not work. Now, you don't know yet what a preview mode is probably, but still, let's focus now on just publishing an empty container. So click submit. You can enter right here, empty container, and then click publish. So now I'm just saving you a lot of hassle in the future because some beginners, they just start working with Google Tag Manager. They try to enable the preview mode and it doesn't work because the container is not published yet. So you must have at least one container version published. And now we see that we have one live version, which is version number 1. This is what you need in order to start properly working with Google Tag Manager. If you see something like container not published right here, you will have to do so. Otherwise, preview mode will not work. And preview mode will be covered a bit later. So when a container is published, what happens is that a new version of a container is created. And you can see the list of versions right here. Now, currently you have only one version because we just published the container once. But in the future, when you will be working more with Google Tag Manager, you will have more items in this list. For example, right here, I have a container already with 4 versions. Now, the reason why versions are useful because if in case you publish something incorrectly and maybe some tracking functionality breaks your website's actual functionality, because that is possible, you can then quickly revert to the previous version and let's say publish version 3 to your visitors because you know that the breaking changes were introduced in the version 4. And then the last main section of Google Tag Manager interface is the admin. So here we have account settings and container settings. Here you can click install Google Tag Manager and here you will see 2 tracking codes that must be added by your developer to a website. Then you can also see container or account activity. You will see who did what. Then you can import container or export container. So this is quite useful. For example, if you want to reuse
some parts of your container in another container. So you can just click export, select what you want to export, and then import those items in another container. Also here we have user management, so you can set some permissions on the account level. This means that your coworker will have access to multiple containers at the same time, or you can set permissions on the container level. If you want to create an additional container in this account, you can click on this plus icon right here. Also, one more place where you can get the tracking code of your Google Tag Manager, the same as it is right here. You can go to Workspace and you can click on this container ID right here, and you will see that pop-up that we saw initially after we created the Google Tag Manager container. And that was a quick overview of a Google Tag Manager interface. To install Google Tag Manager, you have to add 2 Google Tag Manager container snippets to the source code of the website. Usually, this job is done by a developer. You can get those 2 container codes by clicking on the container ID in your Google Tag Manager interface. Click it, and then you will have to send these 2 codes to a developer. In this video, I will show you an example of how to add these 2 codes to the source code of the website. Now, keep in mind that this is just an example, and every website might have different content management systems, code base, or something else. So I just wanted to show you this because I want you to get a better idea of how things work. But remember that usually this is done by a developer. So if we read these instructions, you will see that this code must be added somewhere in the head of the website, and this code must be added somewhere in the body of the website. If you don't know yet, website's HTML code is split into 2 parts, the head part and the body part. Head part is responsible for various settings, loading scripts, meta description, meta keywords, meta title, and so on, while body is responsible for the content. So let's copy the first code. I can just mark this, copy it like that, and then I will go to the content management system of one demo website. And here I am already in the code editor of that website. And then here we have the opening head tag. So this means that this is the beginning of the website head. And here below somewhere, we have the closing head tag. The closing head tag always has this slash right here. Now it's perfectly fine to add Google Tag Manager container code, the first code, before the closing head tag right here, like that. And then after the head ends, we see the opening body tag. It might look like this. On some websites, it might look like this. So below this body tag, it is recommended to add the second code, which is right here. So copy this part and then paste it right here. Now, the first code is essential for Google Tag Manager to work. So this must be added somewhere in the code. It's recommended to have it in the head, but if your content management system does not allow to add custom codes to the head, it is still fine to add it to the body. But the sooner you load your Google Tag Manager container snippet, the better. And speaking of the body, well, now I'm not going to dive into details, but keep in mind that this is optional. You don't have to add this, but if you add it, then it is recommended to do so right after the opening body tag right here. So this is the opening body tag that contains no slashes. And then after that, we add the Google Tag Manager no script code right here. If you want to learn more details about the installation of Google Tag Manager, for example, why is this code not necessary, or where can you add it, or various scenarios where this code is added to the head, to the body, and so on, I will post a link below this video. So once you or your developer installs Google Tag Manager container snippets on a website, then let's click Save. And then let's check whether the Google Tag Manager is working properly. Let's go to Google Tag Manager, click on Preview, and then you will have to enter the URL of your website. Click Start. And if you see the connected widget right here that says connected, and if you see that Google Tag Manager Preview mode has also connected right here, this means that Google Tag Manager has been installed properly. So this is how you can install Google Tag Manager on a website where you or your developer has a direct access to the source code of the website. Now, if you're working with some popular content management system, or maybe some popular e-commerce platform like WooCommerce or Magento or WordPress, there's a very high chance that someone has already developed a plugin that will help you install Google Tag Manager much faster.
As I've mentioned before, if you want to use Google Tag Manager on a website, you, or in most cases your developer, must add Google Tag Manager container snippets to website source code. But in some situations, it happens that you cannot get Google Tag Manager installed right away. For example, maybe a developer is on vacation and he's coming back, let's say after a week. So instead of waiting for a developer to add the code, you can temporarily inject your Google Tag Manager container into any website. Of course, this is happening within the boundaries of your browser, but still you can start working on your configuration. And when a developer comes back, let's say from vacation, all he will need to do, or all she will need to do, is just publish the container and all of your configuration will go live immediately. So here's an example. I have a website. I don't know, I found it online. It's called demosite.com. In your case, you might use something different. So if I want to inject my Google Tag Manager container temporarily within the boundaries of my browser on this website, all I need to do is that I need to install a Chrome extension, which is called Data Layer Inspector. I will post the link to this page below the video. And once you go to this page, you will need to click Add to Chrome, then Add Extension, and you will find a new icon that looks like this right here. This extension does many things. For example, it helps you debug some of the implementations. But in this case, we will be using just one feature, which is injecting Google Tag Manager container. So first, let's go to Google Tag Manager, click on this container ID right here, and then copy the last part of the Google Tag Manager container without GTM dash. Copy just this part. And then go to your website where you want to inject this container, or in my case, that is demosite.com. And I will click on Data Layer Inspector. Then I will click the checkbox if it isn't clicked yet. Then go to Advanced Options, Add Functionality, Inject Google Tag Manager Container, and paste that second part of the Google Tag Manager container. This is very important. You should not paste the entire ID right here. GTM dash is already pre-filled. You need to enter the second part of the ID. And right here, you need to enter the host of the website. In other words, the domain, without HTTPS, without any slashes, without anything that might come after the domain. In my case, that is just demosite.com. If this website had www.demosite.com, I would need to enter that right here as well. Then click Save and reload the page. Unfortunately, nothing happened yet because, well, we need to do one more thing. We need to check whether Google Tag Manager is installed properly. And we can do that by going to Google Tag Manager and clicking Preview right here. And we will need to enable the preview mode. Then I will enter the URL of the website. In your case, you should enter your address and then click Start. If you see the debugger window right here, I mean the window with your website, and you see the widget right here that says debugger connected, this is a good sign. So this means that your Google Tag Manager is installed properly. In fact, you can minimize this window, go to that Tag Assistant tab, which says connected, and you can see that there are 3 page view related events in the preview mode. I will later explain how to use preview mode. Let's talk about 3 main components of Google Tag Manager that you should be aware right now. The first one is tag. The tag is usually a tracking code that you want to implement on your site. It might be Facebook Pixel event tag, it might be Google Analytics page view, it might be Google Ads conversion code, or whatever. So if you want to activate a certain tracking code on a site, that is a tag. Then there are triggers. Triggers are conditions when you want your tags to fire. So if, for example, you want to activate your Google Ads conversion tag when a visitor signs up for your newsletter, that is a trigger. Other examples of triggers might be a page view, a click of a certain button, when a visitor scrolls for more than 25% of your page, and so on. And then there is a third component, which is called variables. Variables are little data points that you can use in tags or triggers. Sometimes variables might contain more information. Sometimes variables are even more complex functions. But in this case, you should start simple. So you can just think of variables as data points that can contain a single value, or maybe a bit more complex, but still some information, some data, or some configuration. When I explain tags, triggers, and variables to Google Tag Manager users, I usually like to start with 3 questions. So the first question is, what do you want Google Tag Manager to do? So for example, if you want to track a conversion, that's a tag. If you want to implement a chat widget on your website, and that chat widget requires to add a code, that's a tag. Another example could be, if you want to track a page view and send that page view to Google Analytics, that is also a tag. Then the next question is, when do you want that to happen? So for example, if you have a Google Ads conversion tag, the question is, when do you want to track that conversion? One of the examples could be when a form is submitted, when a button is clicked, or something else. So all of these situations are triggers. And then the last question is what, when, or how exactly. So if you want to be more specific, that's where variables come in. For example, if you want to fire your tag on a page view, the question is, do you want to fire on all page views, or do you want to fire on a specific page view? So if, for example, you want to fire only on one specific page, then the page address is the variable, because you want to fire your tag only when a trigger is page view and the variable is, let's say, page URL contains thank you or order successful or something else. So let's go back to that very first slide where we had tags, triggers, and variables. So once again, tag is a tracking code that you want to fire, but I mean, not only tracking code, that code might not track users. That code might, I don't know, change the color of a button or something else. But in general, tag is a piece of JavaScript that you want to activate on your site. Then a trigger is a condition when you want to happen. And then variable is a data point, or I don't know, some set of information or maybe some function that you use to either to make the trigger more specific or to transfer that particular data to third-party tools. And I believe that variables are the most confusing. At least they were for me when I was just starting to learn Google Tag Manager. So we can take a look at this a bit differently. At first, we have a tag. In this case, it's Google Ads conversion tag. So what do we want to do? We want to send a conversion data to Google Ads. Then the question is, when do we want that to happen? And that's where triggers come in. And our condition could be, well, we want to fire our Google Ads conversion tag on a thank you page. But Google Tag Manager is not a human, it's a system. And Google Tag Manager does not know what a thank you page means. We need to be more specific. We need to instruct the system to behave as we want. So in this case, that's where variables become very handy. We want our trigger to fire not on any page view, but only on those pages where a variable, which is page URL, contains purchase successful. Because we know that a visitor lands on this page only when that visitor has actually purchased something. So this is our conversion. Now you might be wondering, all right, so this might look quite clear. I mean, you can probably understand why this variable is used right here, but what about a variable in a tag? What kind of variable can we use in a tag and make use of it? And an example could be like this. What if we could send not only the fact of a conversion to Google Ads, but also the order value? And that's where another variable could be used. In this case, we could send the variable, which is order total, and that variable could send the value of $30 to Google Ads. And in this case, we could see not only the number of conversions, but we can also see the number of revenue that was generated because of Google Ads.
Before we dive deeper, first, I wanted to give you a very brief introduction to Google Analytics 4. Now, what you should keep in mind is that this course is Google Tag Manager course. So we focus on data collection, not on data analysis or how to navigate Google Analytics 4 reports. That is why I will not be teaching you how to use things like Analysis Hub or some other advanced features. We are focusing on data collection. So first, let's have a very brief introduction to Google Analytics 4, and then we'll learn how to send data to Google Analytics, like events, including page views, and so on. So I hope that you and I are on the same page right now regarding expectations from this course, because once again, this is a Google Tag Manager course. And now we can take a quick look at what GA4 is in general. So Google Analytics 4 is the latest version of Google Analytics that allows you to track things like website data and mobile app data and see that data in a single property. For example, if you have, let's say, 3 websites that are part of the same user journey, and also you have 2 mobile apps, one for Android and one for iOS, all of them can be tracked in a single Google Analytics 4 property. That is possible because of a new hierarchy that is available in Google Analytics 4. We have data streams. In other words, we have sources of data, and from those data streams, the data is coming in to your Google Analytics 4. Data streams are controlled in the admin panel of Google Analytics that you can find by clicking this gear icon in the bottom left corner and then going to the property column by choosing data streams. When you click it, you will be offered to create your first data stream, of course, if you haven't yet created one. And as you can see, there are 3 types: iOS, Android app, and then website. If your business does not have mobile apps, that is not a problem. You can have just website data streams in your Google Analytics 4. In this course, I will be focusing only on website tracking. So let's say that I click this, and then here I will need to enter the URL of the website, and I will need to enter the stream name right here. Also, a new feature in Google Analytics 4 compared to previous versions is enhanced measurement. Enhanced measurement is a set of features in Google Analytics 4 that is responsible for tracking more events. Because in the previous version of Google Analytics, you were tracking only page views. But right now, you can also track things like scrolling, outbound link clicks, site search, video engagement, and file downloads. I mean, site search was also available in the previous version of Google Analytics, but right now it is turned into an event. When you want to create a new data stream, you must enter the URL of your website, and you can enter, let's say, GTM sandbox website or something like that. Or if you want, you can just enter the same URL right here. Also, I see that I have mistakenly added the HTTPS right here, so you should not include that because it is included in the drop-down right here. Now click Create Stream, and then you will see a view like this. This is your data stream's measurement ID. This is an equivalent to the previously known tracking ID, which was starting with UA dash and something something. Now all the measurement IDs start with G dash and then some random numbers and strings. As always, you have several options how to install Google Analytics 4. One is by adding gtag JS code to the source code of the website. So this must be done by your developers. But obviously, in this course, we will focus on the Google Tag Manager option. If you are familiar with the previous version of Google Analytics, you know that there were various hit types like page views, events, social interactions, and all the other stuff. But right now in Google Analytics 4, everything is an event. So here is a quick comparison of hit types in Google Analytics 4 and the previous version. So we had page views, we had events, e-commerce data. So this is just standard e-commerce data, then social interactions, timing, and so on. In Google Analytics 4, there are no other hit types except event. That is why Google Analytics 4 is called event-based analytics platform. And when you start getting some data into your reports, I mean, when you start sending events and some additional information, then that data will be displayed in reports. So we have acquisition reports, we have engagement reports. Here we see some page view and event information. Now, when I'm saying page view, I'm actually still referring to events actually, because page view is just an event that is called page view. Then if you implement e-commerce tracking, that data will appear in monetization. Then we have some additional reports right here, tech and demographic reports. Also, let's not forget conversions. In the previous version, they were called goals, but right now that term has changed into a more standard one, which is called just conversions. Then we have the list of all events. So everything you will be sending to Google Analytics, you will see right here. Then we have an analysis section. So this one is quite powerful. However, it's also more advanced. The main difference right now between Google Analytics 4 and the previous versions is that previous version had more predefined reports where you could just quickly check one thing or another. Now in Google Analytics 4, we have a lot of more advanced reports such as exploration, but you will need to know how to navigate those. Unfortunately, in this course, I will not show you how to use these because, well, that's the job of Google Analytics course, not Google Tag Manager. I mean, I might show like one example how to like see your data that you send, but that is all. Then we have things like debug view, which is very useful, and we will use this multiple times throughout this course. And then there are several other reports, but you should make that discovery by yourself. Right now, let's just make a very quick look into several types of reports in Analysis Hub. So first of all, we have an exploration report, and then you will see a view that looks something like this.
This a bit reminds of Google Data Studio. Of course, the dimensions panel is on the right side in Data Studio, but nevertheless, you can include various dimensions in a report. So for example, if I want to see my visitors not based on city, but on country instead, then I will see a table like this. And I can also select what kind of values, or in other words, metrics when I see. If I want to add more dimensions or metrics that are not available in this list, I can click on this plus icon and then select from a much larger list of dimensions. Also, if you want, you can use a different type of report, not just table, but also you can use other types like map. Then there are some other types, but once again, it's up to you to play around and discover. Also, if you want, you can create additional tabs. Let's say one tab is with exploration, the other one might have some other types. In fact, let's take a look at another example, which is really cool as well. I really like the funnel analysis part, because in the previous version of Google Analytics, funnel reporting just sucked. I mean, I really hated funnel reports back there, including things like goal funnels that were not retroactive. In Google Analytics 4, the funnel reports are much more flexible and they are, of course, retroactive. So you can just select several events and the report will show you the funnel, including the past data. Of course, as long as you have been collecting that data. To create a funnel, you should go to Steps section and click the pencil icon, and then enter all the steps that you want to include in your funnel. Let's start with a very simple example. On my blog, I have opt-in forms, and I'm sending two custom events to Google Analytics 4. One is when a visitor enters his or her email in my opt-in form, and then the other event is when that email address is confirmed. So this means that when a visitor clicks a link, the double opt-in link, in their inbox. So let's name the first step initiated opt-in, and then let's select the condition. So my first step is when I send an event of which name is initiated opt-in, and then the second step of the funnel is confirmed opt-in. And this step consists of an event of which name is confirmed email opt-in. Of course, you could include more steps, but right now I'm just showing a very, very basic example. And then click apply. And here we see that this is how many users have initiated the opt-in, and only 62%, actually even less than 62%, have completed. So this means that something is wrong. Maybe some people just don't get the email. Maybe that email lands in their spam inbox, or maybe something else is happening. So I should definitely dig into that and try to find out what is the possible reason. Also, maybe bots are causing some issues, because this event is fired when a visitor is redirected to a certain page that asks to confirm the email address. So maybe, bots are submitting forms. Maybe they're also loading Google Analytics 4, and that is why this discrepancy is so large. But once again, I would need to dig into that, because this is a quite leaky funnel and I would need to work more on that. And then there is one more report type that I wanted to show you. Actually, there are more, but I just want to focus on coolest ones in my opinion, and that is path analysis. So basically, path analysis is the next generation of the flow reports in Universal Analytics. Actually, flow reports in the older version were kinda lame because you could not do a lot with them. But with path analysis, some of the long-awaited features are introduced. Here's the cool thing about the new report. When you start it, actually click Start Over, and then you will have two options. Do you want to go from the start to the end, or do you want to start from the end? And actually, this part was very much requested. We can define, let's say, the final conversion, and then we can go from that conversion backwards and see where the visitors are coming from. Which pages did they visit before? Which events did they make, and so on. So this is really cool. So let's say that I want to start with from the ending point, then event name, and then let's say, convert email opt-in. And then from here, I can see that before the event, there was always a page view, but this is obvious because I probably also send a page view on the email opt-in confirmation page. But then if I click that one, I will see this event. Let's dig deeper. Then we see initiated opt-in. Then I see the page view right here. So this is quite interesting. I see the confirmed opt-in, then I see the initiated opt-in, and now I can take a look at what kind of page views did that happen. Then I click right here and
I mean, yeah, we can go backwards. I'm not sure how many steps, probably like up to 10 steps, I guess. I haven't checked that, so sorry for possible misinformation, but like you can definitely find something interesting right here. Now, speaking of other report types, I can also mention things like User Explorer. So this is quite similar to the reports that were available in Universal Analytics. Then we have segment overlap. So segment overlap basically is that you build several segments and you can check how they are overlapping. Then we have cohort analysis. But as I've said, other reports are for your own discovery. First of all, let's log into your Google Analytics account, and I mean any property at all. Then you should go to the admin in the bottom left corner, and then in the property column, you should click Create New Property. Of course, if you haven't yet created a new property, click it right here. Then you should enter the property name. So it can be something like Analytics Mania GTM course or something like that. Then choose your reporting time zone and your country, also the currency that your business is currently operating in. Then click Next, answer several questions, or just click Create, and you will be automatically redirected to the Data Streams section. Here, you should select Web because this course focuses on web tracking. If you have already completed that, you don't have to create a new data stream. Continue using your existing one. And then you can enter here the name of your stream. If you want, you can just enter the subdomain right here. But keep in mind that, at least for now, you cannot change this name later on. So you should think about that. Then click Create Stream. And there are two options how Google Analytics 4 can be installed. And I think that you probably know what those are. One is by adding this code directly to the website's source code, and this must be done by your developers. But we will be focusing on Google Tag Manager installation because this course is entirely about Google Tag Manager. So what we should do right now is that we should copy this measurement ID right here. So you can just select it like that, copy, or just click on this icon to copy, and then go to Google Tag Manager. On Google Tag Manager, go to Tags and click New. This is our first tag that we are creating in this course. And when we do that, there are two sections that we have to configure in a tag. First of all is what must be done. So the answer to the question, what must be done, is Google Analytics 4 must be launched on every page. So first of all, here is the tag configuration. So let's click it and you will see a bunch of tag templates right here. Now, tag template is basically an easier way for you to manage your tracking code. Instead of just, copy pasting or editing some custom code right here, you will just need to select a tag template. And as you can see, there is no code right here. We just have more user-friendly fields. Let's say input field, maybe some buttons, there might be some drop downs, radio buttons or something else, but you don't have to deal with the code right here. And this is obviously very convenient for non-technical people. So this is the field where we have to enter the measurement ID that we copied from the web stream right here. So once again, if I haven't copied that yet, I need to click right here and then paste it right here. So this is responsible for activating the Google Analytics 4 on our website. Now, the second part of the tag is when exactly do we want to do that? And speaking of Google Analytics 4 configuration tag, we want to activate it on every page. That is why we go to triggering, click on pencil, and then select one default built-in trigger, which is all pages. So in other words, what will happen is that when Google Tag Manager is loaded, then this tag will fire as well. And the last thing that we have to do is we need to enter the tag name right here. Now, this is purely for internal usage, but I highly recommend that you have some naming convention in place, because when your container grows, you will definitely benefit from clear and concise naming convention. So what I do is here I enter the type of the tag, in this case is GA4, then config, because this is the configuration tag, and then I paste the measurement ID right here. Now, why am I entering this configuration ID right here? Because there's a chance that in the future you might have more configuration tags with some other measurement IDs in the same container. So this is just for future. And click Save right here. And here is our first tag that we have just created. So to sum up, we have created a tag that will fire on every page, and every page in this case means every page where Google Tag Manager container is installed. And that
tag will send the page view right here, and also will enable, in general, Google Analytics 4 on your website. So this means that things like enhanced measurement will also be activated. And the thing that we have done here is an equivalent to adding this code directly in the source code of your website. But we are not done yet. This is just the beginning. We have implemented the tag in our container, but we will need to check whether it is working properly on the actual website. And we will do that in the upcoming lesson. By the way, I just wanted to take one more look at tag templates in Google Tag Manager. So if you click New in the Tags section and click on Tag Configuration, you will see a much longer list of tag templates. And we're talking not only about Google-related tags like Google Ads or Google Optimize, also there are some other tags like Crazy Yak for heat maps, Hotjar is as well for heat maps, LinkedIn Pixel, then Bing Ads, and a bunch of other templates right here. Now, if you don't find a template right here, for example, you won't find Facebook Pixel, there are several options. The first option is to implement Facebook Pixel code in the custom HTML tag right here. So you can just click on this and then you can paste the code, for example, the code of your pixel, and then select when you want this tag to fire. And another option is to use the templates section right here, where you can search the gallery of the existing templates and then install it in your Google Tag Manager container. When you make some changes in Google Tag Manager container, they do not go live until you publish your container. But before you do that, it is absolutely necessary for you to test everything with the preview mode. And even till this day, after many hours and years of working with Google Tag Manager, I just do not trust myself, and I have to test every change, even the smallest change, in my Google Tag Manager container. And I really recommend that you do the same thing. So when you add some changes, in our case that is GA4 configuration tag, you should click the preview button right here. Then enter the URL of the website and click Start. If you have installed Google Tag Assistant extension, the window with your browser will be opened in a new tab. So this is much more convenient. Also, what is really cool is that if you have, let's say, 5 pages opened of the same website, for example, here, here, and here, we have like 4 different tabs. What you will notice is that the icon right here on every tab is different. Therefore, it will be much easier for you to identify that right here. But more on that a bit later. And now I have the preview mode right here. Actually, let me just quickly clear everything. Then I will refresh the page once again. And now I have enabled the preview mode. First of all, there are 2 tabs, or maybe 1 tab and 1 window in your case. This is the preview mode, like the debugger view. And here is your website with the widget that says connected. So if you want the preview mode to work, this must say connected, and this must say connected, and also you should see the word connected right here. So this means that both windows are connected with each other, and we will be able to see how things are happening and like what is happening on the website and what Google Tag Manager preview mode is able to see. Because what you will see right here is basically what you can use in Google Tag Manager. So the preview mode can be split into several parts. The first one is the header, and here we can see various Google Tag Manager containers and Google Analytics 4 properties, and maybe some other things that are related to Google Ads in this header right here. So if, for example, you have multiple containers on the same page, which is technically possible, you can see them right here and you can switch between them. Of course, at the moment, I have only one Google Tag Manager container, and from that container, the Google Analytics 4 is activated right here. Right now, we will focus only on Google Tag Manager container. Then on the left side, we see the event stream. Now, this is the event stream of Google Tag Manager. This is what is happening in a thing called data layer. If you want to fire your tag on a certain interaction on a page, let's say on a click or on a form submission, first of all, that submission or that click or that whatever interaction must appear right here. And right here, we see the main section that is split into 4 parts: tags, variables, data layer, and errors. So if we click, let's say, on the first event right here, which is container loaded, you will see that on this event, this tag has fired. And if we click other event, which is DOM ready or window loaded, you will see that the tag is now in this section, tags not fired. Now, first of all, you might be wondering, what is container loaded, DOM ready, and window loaded? So container loaded is the earliest moment when Google Tag Manager container was loaded on that particular page. This is an equivalent to the trigger all pages. So every time you set the tag to fire on all pages, this in other words means all container loaded events. Then we have two other page load phases. We can call them like that. So this is the earliest moment when the page has loaded. DOM ready is the moment when website elements are rendered by the browser. So this means that the elements most likely become visible on the browser's window, at least in many cases. And then we have window loaded. Window loaded is the final step of the page loading process. And it means that all page resources, this means content, images, and also various scripts have finalized loading. So if you are instructed to fire a tag only when the page has completely loaded, window loaded event is exactly what you need. So let's go back to checking our GA4 configuration tag. We have configured that tag to fire on all pages. In other words, all container loaded events. So if we go to the preview mode right here and click on container loaded, you will see that the tag has indeed fired and its status is succeeded. This is a good sign. Also, you can click on this tag and see what kind of information was activated. We see that this is the measurement ID and that the request was sent to Google Analytics and that Google Analytics 4 is properly activated. Then we also see the firing triggers section. This is the condition that was met and this tag was fired. Now, GTM.js is a technical name for the container loaded event, or in other words, all pages trigger. This might look confusing, but over the time you will get used to that. So right now, all you need to know is that the preview mode is the way how you can check whether your tags are firing exactly when you expect them to. And the way how you should do that is that you should click the event on which you expect the tag to fire and see whether that tag has actually fired. So in our case, all pages is all container loaded events. Therefore, we clicked on that event and we see that the tag has fired. If we click DOM ready, the tag did not fire. Window loaded, the tag did not fire. And if we had some click events right here, we would see that if we click those events, you would not find that tag among tags fired. And this configuration tag would still be as not fired. Also, if you want, you can do some additional check. For example, well, we have configured the tag to fire on all pages. So why don't we go from the home page to, let's say, catalog page? A new page has loaded and you will see that a new page load is right here because this is the first page load of the home page. And this is the second page load of the catalog page, or in other words, product list page. And right here, we see a new container loaded event. So this means that the page has started loading, then elements were rendered on the page, and then all the other scripts have loaded as well. And on this event, container loaded, you see that the tag has fired once again. And if we go to the summary, you will see that the configuration tag has fired 2 times in total. If you click it, you will even see on which exact events it fired. It fired on the first container loaded right here, and it also fired on a 5th event in this stream, which is also container loaded. Even though we see that our Google Analytics 4 tag has fired properly, that is not the end of the story. We still need to make sure that the data has actually been received properly by Google Analytics 4. And we can do that by going to Google Analytics, then scrolling to the bottom of the left sidebar. You can actually expand it and you will see the section called Debug View. Now this is where can we check the incoming data and see whether everything is working properly. So click Debug View, and here first of all you should see your device right here, and then you should see some events right here. The debug view in Google Analytics 4 is completely different thing and functionality compared to the preview mode of Google Tag Manager. Google Tag Manager preview mode is responsible for checking all of the tags that are firing in your container. Maybe you have some Facebook pixel tags or Google Ads tags or something else. With Google Tag Manager preview and debug mode, you would be able to see what is happening in your container. Now, the debug view of Google Analytics 4 is responsible for showing only the data that is coming into Google Analytics 4. So let's take a quick overview of the debug view right here. When you go to the debug view, of course, you should first refresh the page of the website. Of your website where you want to install Google Analytics 4. Then you check whether on that latest page view, the tag has fired, and we see that it indeed has. Then we go to the debug view and you will see the page view event. So this was automatically sent by the configuration tag because we have enabled that checkbox right here. I'm talking about this checkbox. And then additionally, your configuration tag might send some additional data like user engagement. If you have enabled the enhanced measurement, you might find some scroll events or maybe something else. For example, if I scrolled down right here, then we should eventually see a scroll event appear right here. Now, there is still some delay between the event actually happening on your website and seeing it right here, but that happens fairly quickly. So if you see your device and your events happening right here, that is a good sign. In fact, we can click on the page view event and we see what kind of parameters were sent to Google Analytics for. For example, if we click on page location, you will see that this is the URL where I am right now. The reason why we are seeing this data in the debug view, because, well, it is not displayed always, is because we have enabled the preview mode right here. So when the preview mode is enabled and you are checking your GA4 implementation, Google Tag Manager adds some additional parameter to all the requests that are coming to Google Analytics 4. And because of that parameter, the data is available in the debug view right here. Because debug view is designed to see only the data that is coming with that debug mode parameter enabled. So if you have, let's say, 500 people right now browsing your website, only those people will be displayed right here who have the debug mode enabled. So it might be, the debug mode of Google Tag Manager enabled. Also, there are some additional ways how the data can be enabled in the debug view. If you want to learn more, I will post some additional resources below the video. But the main takeaway right now is that even if you see that the tag has fired in Google Tag Manager preview mode, that still does not mean that everything was properly activated. You always have to check the final destination. And in this case, it is the debug view of Google Analytics 4. If you are working with some other tool that also offers some real-time debugging capabilities, you should then go to that tool and test whether the data that is being sent from Google Tag Manager and from that certain tag, that it is displayed in the real-time reports of that particular tool. For example, Facebook Pixel also has some event testing capabilities. Now, if you are dealing with the tool that does not have the real-time reports, well, then you will have to, activate the tag, check how it is working, and then after a while, maybe, after several hours, maybe after a day or so, go to the standard report of that particular tool and check if that tool is displaying your data properly, and then publish the container. But I will talk more about publishing the container in the upcoming lessons. Okay, then I also would like to mention some additional tips that are quite useful when working with the preview mode. So if you are navigating in one tab of the preview mode, and let's say that I am holding right now the control key, and then I click, let's say, subscribe and contact, and I open them in new tabs, you will see that the preview mode is enabled because the fav icons right here, they are using the preview modes, call it icon or whatever. But like if I was working between all these three tabs, it would be quite challenging for me to quickly identify which page view is which. Now, if you have installed the Tag Assistant extension in your Chrome browser, you will notice that that extension is adding some additional icon right here. And you will see that every tab has a different icon, and that very same icon is visible right here. So you can quickly identify that this data is coming from this particular page because this is a red ring right here and right here. Now this is a green circle, and this means that I'm working with this page. So this is quite convenient. And then another thing that is super crucial, especially for me when I'm helping other people, is that if you get stuck somewhere with your Google Tag Manager implementation and you don't know what is going on and you need help, then you should definitely share the preview mode with that other person who's trying to help you. So for example, if you need my help, instead of just saying something like, hey, my GTM is not working, which is like super vague and totally unclear, instead, you could briefly describe, or actually in great detail describe your situation, and together with that request, you should include the link to your preview mode. That way, I will be able to see what is happening in your preview mode, how your tags are firing, but I will not be able to edit anything or break something in your container, so you're still safe. So, speaking of sharing the preview mode, you enable the preview mode right here, then you go right here, click on these three dots and click share. Now, this is very important. By default, this preview mode enables only the preview of the global site tag. In other words, you will just be able to see
what kind of requests are sent to Google Analytics, but I won't be able to see other tags in your Google Tag Manager container. That is why you should click on this drop down and select global site tag and the ID of your container. Now this will change the URL of your shareable debug link. And then when you select your correct Google Tag Manager container, select this URL, click copy or just copy link, and then include that in your request, where you're asking for help, or just, forward this link to someone who's trying to help you. So this is very important. Because when you need some help with Google Tag Manager, you need to keep in mind that Google Tag Manager is quite complex and literally like million things can go wrong. So if you want help, you have to be cooperative and you have to provide as much information as possible. And the preview modes link is one of those essential things that you have to provide. So when you test your configuration and you make sure that your tags are firing when they are supposed to, now it's time to publish your changes. And we will do that in the upcoming lesson. After you have tested your configuration in Google Tag Manager container, now it's time to publish those changes and make them go live. Because what we have done so far is that we were working within the boundaries of your browser and your container. But if this container is added to your website source code, those visitors are still not getting Google Analytics 4 activated on their page. But once we submit these changes and publish the container, then those visitors will be also tracked with Google Analytics 4. So once you're ready, click submit in this top right corner. Then you will see a view like this. You have two options. One is publish and create version, and the other one is just create version. So as I've mentioned before, every time you publish a container, a new version is created. This is useful because if something goes wrong, you can roll back to the previous working version and then publish that one instead. But if you don't want to publish your changes live to the website visitors, but you just want to create a checkpoint, like in video game, where you save your progress, then you can click just create version. In that case, you will create a new version, like a new point where you can roll back to, but your website visitors will still not be getting these changes. But in our case, we want to create version and we want to publish those changes. Also, I highly recommend that you enter at least the version name, because if you don't enter, then the list of your versions will not be very descriptive. And if you want to quickly find what functionality was implemented when, well, seeing the list without version names will make that process much more difficult. That is why I always enter at least version name. Something like that will work just fine. Of course, if you want to include some additional description right here, feel free to do so. And there are several benefits when it comes to properly naming your versions. First of all, if you go back to this container, after a year or maybe 2 years, and if you see just a list of version numbers without version names, well, it will make your work much more difficult. That is why your future self will thank you if you add version names right here. Also, if someone else takes over the container in the future, it will just look more professional if you properly name your versions. But first of all, think about yourself in the future. Properly naming your versions is very important. So once you have entered the name and description, then click publish. And eventually you will be redirected to this version summary where you see what kind of changes were made and what was the content of that container. Right now we have just only one tag, no triggers, and some built-in variables, but in the future lessons we will add some additional content right here. And if we click on versions right here, you will see the list of all versions. This is our empty container version that we published immediately after we created a new container, because otherwise the preview mode would not have worked. And this is our latest live version. So you can see that this version has two statuses. One is live, so this means that website visitors are getting this version, so they are being tracked with Google Analytics 4. And also this is the latest version, so this means that we are editing this version currently in the interface of Google Tag Manager. Now let's imagine one situation. Let's say that this version number 2 contains some breaking changes that are breaking certain functionality of the website. Let's say some button clicks are not working at all. So we have to roll back to the previous version that we know that was working. Then we will have enough time to fix the existing version, and then we will publish those changes once again. So let's first of all make sure that our visitors are back to normal. And I mean that we need to make sure that they get the proper experience just like it was before we published the container. So let's republish the version number 1 to our visitors. Next to this version, click 3 dots and then click publish.
then click publish right here. So what we have done is that we started loading the first version of the container to our visitors. So this means that there are no longer breaking changes for them. And now we can properly, without rushing, we can fix the problem in the version number 2. So, I can maybe go to tags. Maybe I have some other tags that are breaking. So let's say that now I have fixed all those problems. They have been solved. And now I am ready to publish this version, this updated version once again. That is why I'm going to click submit again. But now just keep in mind that we are just pretending that I did something. In reality, like if you have some breaking changes, you should actually fix them. And then let's name this version, let's say fixed breaking changes or something like that. Then click publish. And then you will see that in the version list, so we have to click this once again, we have a new third version, which contains some fixes. And this version is both live. So this means that website visitors are now getting this live version. And also another status is latest. So latest means that we are now editing that third version right here in the interface. And of course, once you publish these changes, you should probably go back to your real-time reports. I mean, your debug view in Google Analytics 4, if those changes, of course, involve Google Analytics 4, and then check what is happening once again, like what kind of data was sent, like, are you getting new data? Also, since we have published these changes live and now we should be getting more data from the actual visitors of the website, you should go to real-time reports and take a look right here. Of course, right now I will probably have only one visitor because that's just me and like there are no other visitors on this website. But if there were, then I would expect to start seeing more data coming in right here, like more users, more events, and so on. Speaking of custom scripts, let's take a look how to install one. In this case, I am going to install a script provided by the Drift chat. So I will be able to add a chat widget that might look something like this to a website. I'm not going to show you like the entire process on how to sign up for Drift, where to find the code. I will just quickly skip directly to the page where I can get their code, and then I will continue the video. Here I am in the Drift interface, and here is the section install. And once I click it, I will get the code that needs to be added to Google Tag Manager. So I will just copy that code right here, and then we'll go to Google Tag Manager, tags, new, tag configuration, and choose custom HTML this time, and then paste the code. Then I go to triggering, and according to Drift's instructions, I need to enter this code on all pages where I want the Drift chat to appear. So that means all pages. Then let me name this tag. I usually name it like this. CHTML stands for custom HTML, and then what kind of code is that? Then I click save. Now, in order to see the latest changes in the preview website, I need to refresh the preview mode once again. I will click the preview button right here. Then the Tag Assistant page will refresh, and I will need to start the preview mode once again. And here it is. The page has been refreshed. We see that the debugger is connected, and here is the chat widget that appeared on top of that widget. This has happened because if I go to the preview mode, to the actual debugger, you will see that on container loaded, now I have the Drift chat right here. So it looks like everything is working fine, and we have installed a custom HTML tag successfully.
Before we continue, I wanted to give you a quick introduction to Google Analytics for events tracking. I hope that you already have these fundamentals, but in case you don't, then I will give you a very brief introduction. If you are familiar with the previous version of Google Analytics, which is called Universal Analytics, I think that you already should know that events were tracked by using mainly 3 or 4 parameters. I'm talking about event category, event action, and event label, and of course, event value. Well, in Google Analytics 4, they are no longer available. They are actually gone. So what does it mean is that you are in charge of what kind of event parameters are sent together to Google Analytics 4. For example, let's say that we are tracking when a visitor logs in. In that case, we could send an event name, which is login, and then we can send additional parameters. For example, method, whether the visitor logged in with email or Google login or Facebook login or something else. And we can also send a parameter called pricing plan or something else. So as you can see, parameters can be whatever you want. I mean, parameter names can be whatever you want. And you don't have to follow this strict category, action, label, and value structure. When it comes to event tracking, there are 4 types of events in Google Analytics 4. Automatically tracked events, so these are tracked by the configuration tag. I mean, when Google Analytics 4 is loaded, those events will be tracked. Then there are enhanced measurement events, for example, outbound link clicks, file downloads, scrolling, and so on. Then there are recommended events. I mean, they are not required, but Google asks you that you should send these if you can, because allegedly this should help their machine learning algorithms to do something. Although at the moment of recording this video, those capabilities are still not that much known. And if you want to track a certain event and it is not covered by neither of these 3 event categories, then you can use custom events. So basically you can name event whatever you want and send parameters whatever you like. Below this video, you will find a link to this official Google Analytics 4 resource where you can learn more about the types of events, what kind of parameters are sent. For example, if we're talking about automatically collected events, you will see what kind of events are there and what kind of parameters are tracked and so on. Speaking of automatically tracked events for websites, there are mainly 3 events. The first one is first session. So this means that Google Analytics 4 property has never seen that visitor before. Then session start. So this means that a visitor was inactive for at least 30 minutes before actually landing on your website. Or in other words, when a session starts. And the third event is user engagement. So this is sent to Google Analytics when a conversion is collected, when a visitor spends 10 seconds on your website, or when 2 or more page views occur by the same user, of course. There are more automatically tracked events for mobile apps, but since this course focuses only on websites, I will not dive deeper into them. Then another type of event is enhanced measurement event, but we have already taken a quick look into that in one of the previous lessons where I was doing an introduction to Google Analytics 4. But below this video, I will post another resource to the official documentation of Google where you can learn what kind of events are sent. So there are page views, scroll, click, view search results, and what kind of parameters are collected by these particular events. Then there is a third group of events, which are called recommended events. So these are the events that Google asks you to send them if you are actually willing to track those interactions. Below the video, there is a link that I have recently mentioned. And on the right side of that page, you will find links that are events, all properties, events, retail, e-commerce, then job, education, local deals, real estate, travels, and games. So these are pages that contain all the recommended events that Google is asking you to send them. So for example, if we click on all properties, you will see some recommended events such as login. If someone makes a purchase, you should send a purchase event. So this means that the name of the event should be exactly like that. Then if someone logs in or let's say registers on your website, then you can send a sign up. For example, there is another event which is useful to send when someone submits a form on your website, and that event is called generate lead. Then there are also some events right here. Then there are some events for job and education. For example, purchase, refund, select item, view cart, and so on. And finally, if you want to track an event and that event is not covered by automatically tracked events, enhanced measurement, or recommended events, then you can just enter some custom event name, some custom parameters, and you're good to go. Now, speaking of where can you find the event data in Google Analytics 4 reports, there are several places. For example, engagement and events. You might find some events right here. Right now, I don't have much data because this is just a demo property. Then you will also find the list of all events right here in the events, all events section. Then there is analysis hub. But in this course, I presume that you already have at least some basics and you know where to find that data. If you don't, I will post a link to my event tracking guide. And at the end of that blog post, there is a section called Where Can I Find the Events Data in Google Analytics 4 Reports? So you can take a look at that. The reason why I'm not diving deeper into the Google Analytics 4 reports because this course is about data collection and about Google Tag Manager. So I will just briefly mention that you can find the data here or here, but will not dive deeper because that job is for the Google Analytics 4 course. All right, so since we got a bit more familiar with the very basics of event tracking, let's take a look at first example.
A really cool thing about Google Tag Manager is that you can specify and make your triggering conditions much more precise. In the previous examples, we were able to fire tags on all pages. But what if we want to fire tag on a certain page? Well, with Google Tag Manager, that is definitely possible. Let's imagine that I have a Google Ads conversion tag, and that tag must be fired when a purchase is made successfully, right? In that case, what I could do is that I could go to triggers and create a new page view trigger, which is page view right here. And then I could specify that I am not interested in all pages, but actually only in some page views. Let's say that when a visitor makes a purchase, he or she is redirected to a page, which is /pages/purchase successful. And then they might see maybe the order summary, maybe the value, maybe the transaction ID or something like that. But in this case, the most important thing is that we have this part of the URL that is quite unique for that particular thank you page. So what we could do is that we could actually enter this part of the URL in the trigger condition, because in trigger, when we decide to make the trigger more precise, we will actually do that with the help of variables. In fact, right now in our Google Tag Manager container, by default, we have 4 variables, which is page hostname, page path, page URL, and refer. And in this case, since we are interested in what is going after the domain, after slash, so this is the part of the URL which is called page path. That's why we can copy this. And then in our trigger, we can select the variable which is called page path right here. And then we can enter this part of the URL. So this trigger will be activated when a visitor lands on a page when page path contains pages/successful. Pages/purchase successful. And then once you create this trigger, you could then go to tags, create new tag configuration, then select Google Ads conversion tracking, then enter the information of the conversion. So to enter this information, you need to be at least a little familiar with Google Ads. This time I will just skip this part. And then when you configure your conversion tag, you will need to select that trigger right here. So you can click on triggering section and then choose the trigger that we have just created. So when a visitor lands on a purchase successful page, this trigger will be activated and it will fire a tag that will send the conversion information to Google Ads. Or, if you want to fire Facebook Pixel, then you could create a Facebook Pixel tag or custom HTML tag and then add the code that is needed for Facebook Pixel to work. So this is one of the examples. What can you do with triggers and how can you make them more specific? Instead of all pages, we made our page view trigger more specific and it is looking just for one particular page, or at least for those pages that have that particular phrase in the page path. Let's now close this tag. And now let's take a look at another example.
Google Analytics 4 already has some built-in link click tracking capabilities, and you can find them by going to admin, then data streams, selecting your data stream. I'm talking about website data stream. And then in the enhanced measurement section, you will find that GA4 is capable of tracking outbound links. So this means that a link redirects a visitor to some external website that does not belong to your business. And then it also tracks file downloads. So if a link contains something like .pdf, .ppt, .docx or something else, then Google Analytics 4 will track that. But what if you want to track other links? Or let's say, what if you want to track links and send that information not to GA4, but let's say to Facebook Pixel or somewhere else? In that case, enhanced measurement will not help you. Therefore, you definitely need to know and need to understand how link click tracking works in Google Tag Manager. And in this video, we will take a look at an example where we will be tracking link clicks on these menu items. But first, let's do one more thing because I just want you to show how link click tracking in Google Tag Manager works in a nutshell. That is why, just to demonstrate the entire process, let's go back to Google Analytics and temporarily disable outbound link clicks and file downloads in enhanced measurement. We will enable them later on, but right now just disable them because I want you to show something else in Google Tag Manager. So once you do that, click Save.
And then let's take a look at how can we work with link click tracking in Google Tag Manager. So first of all, every time you have to track something with Google Tag Manager, you have to inspect like what kind of data can you get about that interaction, or is Google Tag Manager capable of tracking that interaction at all? And to do that, we have to enable the preview and debug mode in Google Tag Manager first. Or if you have already enabled, then you should refresh that. In both cases, you should click the preview button in Google Tag Manager interface. Since my preview mode was disabled, I am asked to enter the URL once again and enable the preview mode. So enter the URL of the sandbox website and click start. Then you will see that the debugger is connected and that Tag Assistant, this window is also connected. So when it comes to event tracking, you have to remember one thing. If you want to track a certain interaction and you want to fire a tag based on that interaction, for example, we will be firing Google Analytics event tag on link clicks. So if you want to do this, that particular interaction, and in our case, that is link click, must appear on the left side of the preview mode. So if you want to track link clicks, first of all, that link click somehow must appear right here. So let's take a look what happens on the website. And let's click on the first link, then the second link, and then let's say the third link. So first of all, the website reloaded 3 times. And after each click, a new page was loaded. And if I go to Google Tag Manager's preview mode, what you will see is that we have 3 new page views. So the first page view, then the second page view, then the third page view. However, there is no event that says link click. And that is a problem because we have to somehow get the link click right here, because on that particular link click, we will be able to fire our tag. And the reason why this is happening is because even though Google Tag Manager is capable of tracking link clicks, the link click tracking feature is currently disabled. So we have to enable it. And to do that, we have to go to Google Tag Manager and create at least one link click trigger that will be activated on a page of our sandbox website. So we have to go to Google Tag Manager, Triggers, click New, Trigger Configuration, and click Just Links. Let's keep all these settings as they are, because right now we are interested in all link clicks, and then let's name the trigger All Link Clicks. Click Save. Now let's refresh the preview mode and check whether this trigger has enabled link click tracking capabilities in Google Tag Manager. So click Preview, then I will be asked to enter the URL. The preview mode has connected. Now let's try clicking any link and see what happens in the preview mode. So let's say that we click Home link right here. And when I click that, I go to the preview mode. And what you will see is that there is a new page load because after I click the link, the page reloaded. But also on the previous page view, there is a new event that is link click. So this link click was possible because Google Tag Manager has now enabled the link click capabilities. So that is definitely a good start. And if we click this link click right here, let's take a look what kind of data about that link click do we have. And if we go to variables, unfortunately, there is nothing related to link clicks right here. All we have is the page data like page URL, page path, page domain, which is also known as host name. All we have is just the event name, which is GTM link click. So this is a technical name of the link click event. But I mean, this event name is not enough if we want to distinguish what kind of link click happened. Because if, let's say, I click on another link in the footer right here, what you will see is that there is another link click event right here, and there is almost no difference between these two events. So we need to somehow get more data about that link click in order to distinguish what kind of link was clicked. Was it a menu link? Was it an outbound link? Was it something else? And if we go to the data layer, what you will see is that there is actually more information about the link click. For example, here we have a parameter called element classes, which could allow us to distinguish that this link click was made on the navigation link, also known as menu link, because the other link click contains different values. Also, there is another variable which is element URL. So this is the URL of the clicked link, and another link was different. So as you can see, there is some data, but unfortunately we cannot use that data because it is not available as a variable in Google Tag Manager. Now, variable is essential in this case, because if we don't have a certain data point as a variable, we cannot use it in Google Tag Manager. Luckily, Google Tag Manager has more built-in click-related stuff. And if we go to Google Tag Manager, to variables, and then click configure in the built-in variables section, you will find a group of variables that are related to clicks. So click element, click classes, click ID, click target, click URL, and click text. Enable all of them, because by default they are disabled. And honestly, I have no idea why this decision was made by Google, because, well, these variables could be just enabled and that is it. Anyway, once you have the click tracking enabled in Google Tag Manager, and in this case we are tracking link clicks, you also have to enable the variables right here. So click classes and so on. And now I have refreshed the preview and debug mode. So let's click on the first link, and let's say the second link and the third link. And here we have all these page views, and here we have, let's say, one link click, the other link click, and all of them were made on those particular menu items. So let's click any of those link clicks and let's go to variables section. And right here we see more variables that we did before. So we have click classes, click element, click ID, and all the other stuff. Now some variables have no value because, for example, in this case, menu links do not have a click ID on this particular website, but we have information such as click text. So this is the text of the link. So I clicked catalog, therefore click text of that particular link click event is catalog. Then this is the URL. So if I copy this link of the catalog and paste it right here, you will see that the URL is connections/all. And this is the exact value that was captured by Google Tag Manager. Also, we have a thing called click classes. And here we see that there are some classes added to that particular link. Now let's click on some other link on a page. Let's say on search link at the bottom. Here is another link click event right here. And here we see that the click URL is this one, click text is this one, but there is no click classes. Then if we click, let's say, on this logo right here, if I click it, that was also a link click. And if I click then the latest link click right here, you will see that the click classes is now different. So site header, logo, link. What I'm getting at is that sometimes you can use click classes as a variable to distinguish whether the link click happened on one type of element or on the other type of element. So for example, in this case, I clicked on this element and its class was site header logo link. If I clicked at the bottom, that link had no class at all. Now, if I click on all of the 5 menu link clicks right here, if I choose the link click right here, you will see that the class is site nav link main. Now, if I click on another link click, the URL has changed because here it was catalog link, this one is home link. Some variables are different, but click classes are the same. So what does it mean? That we can use this variable and make our link click trigger more precise. Because right now we don't want to track all link clicks. We just want to track and fire our tag only on those link clicks that are menu links. And we can distinguish menu links by the variable called click classes. And we can say that if click classes variable contains, let's say, site nav link main, then it means that the visitor clicked a menu link, and then we will send that event to Google Analytics. So let's go to Google Tag Manager, triggers, and then click our existing all link clicks trigger right here. Then click on the pencil icon right here and choose some link clicks. Now here we can make our trigger more specific because we want our tag that we are going to create in the near future. We want our tag to fire not on all link clicks, but on some link clicks where click classes contains site nav link main. Now copy this exactly, because if there are some typos, then the trigger will not work, and paste it right here. And let's rename the trigger to something more specific. So let's say link click and menu item or something like that. Click save. Now the final part is to send that click information to Google Analytics. So let's say that we will fire a Google Analytics 4 event tag when the link click trigger is activated. And together with that event, we will send the name of the event, which can be, let's say, click. And then we can also send the click URL and click text together with that event. So let's go to Google Tag Manager, tags, and click new. Then click tag configuration and select GA4 event, because right now we are about to send the event to Google Analytics 4. The first thing that we should define is to which exact Google Analytics property should we send this event, because Google Tag Manager does not know that. What if you have, let's say, multiple Google Analytics 4 properties configured in the same container? Well, with each tag, you have to define to which exact property do we want to send that event. And there are mainly 2 ways how can we define to which exact property to send that event.
And the first option is to manually set the measurement ID on the level of this tag, but it is not very convenient if we talk about, containers with 50 or 100 tags, because manual work always takes more time. If you are configuring your measurement IDs on the individual level of each tag, eventually it will cost you more time to maintain that. That is why I would recommend choosing the GA4 configuration tag that you have already created. Now, what happens here is that this event tag will reuse the settings of this configuration tag. And we have already entered the measurement ID in that configuration tag. So instead of manually copy pasting your measurement IDs in this tag, we are just selecting the existing configuration tag, and this event will take those settings. All right, so I hope that this is now clear. And the next step is to add the event name. We have to add some meaningful name to this event that follows the rules of Google Analytics 4. As you already know, there are several types of events in Google Analytics 4, including automatically tracked events, enhanced measurement events, recommended events, and custom events. So if we want to come up with some meaningful name, first we should check what is required by Google. Below this video, I will post a link to this page where there are several types of events. So let's start with automatically collected events. And here we will see a bunch of events. Most of them are app related, but some of them are related to the website as well. And we have one event, which is called click. This is quite generic, but if you want, you can use that as an event name. I mean, that is fine. However, this part is not entirely correct because it says that there are no parameters collected. But if we click on this enhanced measurement link, you will see that actually there are some parameters that are more familiar to Google Analytics 4. So if you want, we can actually use these parameters. And I mean, we can send data to these particular parameters. Now, speaking of event tracking in Google Analytics 4, there is a lot of flexibility. So there is no single correct answer to most of the questions. I mean, most of the configuration questions. If you want, you can name the event menu click or menu link click or something else. If you want, you can send these parameters. If you want, you can send your custom parameters like menu link click, like menu item name or something like that. And actually, like all of those options will work. And as of the moment of recording this video, I still haven't chosen like the best option for myself, and I'm still constantly experimenting with the setup. In this video that is related to link click tracking, we will use the recommended event. I mean, this is probably the automatic event and some more standard parameters. So let's go to Google Tag Manager, and in the event name, let's enter click. And then in event parameters, we might add some additional data. We have link classes. Like all of these parameters are optional. Like you don't have to add them. But I mean, the word click for an event name is quite generic, and we would actually benefit from sending some additional data. We can send the link URL. What else do we have here? Yeah, I guess that works fine. You know what? Actually, I think that if I scroll down, there is another event, which is file download, and that file download is using a parameter called link text. Why not use that one? All right, so we have parameters. Now we have to assign some values to those parameters. And this is where the power of Google Tag Manager and the real awesomeness comes in, because we can actually add some dynamic values right here. So for example, if I click on the menu item, which is blog, then we could pass the text of that link, which is the word blog, in this particular field. And in fact, we can do that by using variables. We already have variables such as click text, which returns the text of the link. And also we have a variable click URL that returns the URL of that clicked link. So let's do that. We can insert variables by clicking this variable button right here. So let's start with link URL. Let's click it and let's think about what kind of variable is the best for link URL. Well, it is click URL, because click URL variable returns the URL of the link that was clicked. So let's select the click URL right here. And then we also have link text. Link text can use the value of the click text variable right here. So let's click the button here and enter click text. So what will happen here is that when a menu link click occurs, Google Tag Manager will take the text of that clicked link and insert it as a value of this link text parameter, and we'll send that to Google Analytics 4. Now, as for link classes, we can send this value, but it's not very readable. Why don't we just send some text like menu link click or menu link, and we can enter it as a plain word, because we know that all menu link clicks have the same click classes value. Therefore, we don't have to insert the actual variable. We can just write a word which is, let's say, menu link. So when a visitor clicks a menu link, Google Tag Manager will send an event of which name is click and link classes is just a word menu link. And based on the values of click URL and click text, they will be dynamic. So if I click, let's say, on the home page right here, the value of the click URL will be this, and this value will be sent together with the parameter link URL to Google Analytics 4. Now let's select the triggering condition, and we have already created that. So click triggering, and then select the link click menu item trigger right here. The last step is to enter the name of the tag, which I usually do like this, GA event menu link click. Let's save this. And now we have to test whether this tag fires exactly when we want to. So let's refresh the preview mode by clicking the word preview. The page has refreshed. The preview mode has connected. And first, let's click on some non-menu link. For example, on this search link at the bottom. Then let's click on the link click, and we see that no tag has fired. Well, we did not expect any to fire, so this is a good sign. Now let's go and click, let's say, on the first menu item, then on the second menu item, then let's say on the third menu item, but let's wait first while the debugger loads. Here it is. So now I made 3 link clicks. Let's go to the preview mode and see what is happening here. So here is the link click. And on this link click, I see that my tag has fired. Let's click it, and you will see what kind of information was sent. If you want to see the actual value of the click URL, you can just switch to values right here, and you will see what was sent. So it was an event with the name click, and then there were some parameters. Also in this tag, we can see the firing trigger section where we see what kind of conditions were met and which trigger activated. So in this case, our tag has only one trigger, and obviously all of these conditions were met. So we were looking for a link click event, and we were looking only for that particular event, and I mean link click, where click classes variable contains this value. And if we switch to values once again, you will see that this is the value of click classes, and this is the value that we were looking for. And this green check mark shows whether the condition was met, and it obviously was. The final thing that we need to do is that we need to go to analytics and check whether the incoming data is actually received. So let's go to the debug view of Google Analytics 4. And here you will see that there are some events. So we have some page views, we have some clicks. So let's click on this click event. And here we will see parameters such as link classes. So this is menu link, then link text, then link URL. So it looks like everything is working properly. I will not be showing how to do that because you already know, but if this was a real project, then you could now submit your changes and publish this container live.
Awesome, you have made it till the end of this tutorial. Now you have a better understanding of what GTM is, how does it work, and how to create your first setup. However, keep in mind that this is just the beginning of your journey. There are still many things that you need to learn about Google Tag Manager. If you want to get some additional details, I have a free ebook which is called Google Tag Manager for Beginners. You will find the link to that ebook below the video. It contains some additional tips that were not mentioned in this video. Also, if you want, you can check my premium Google Tag Manager course for beginners. This video that you're currently watching explained around 15% of what a beginner should actually know about Google Tag Manager. The rest 85% are explained in my course, which is called Google Tag Manager Masterclass for Beginners. I will post the link below the video to learn more. If you found this video useful, hit the thumbs up button because it helps me continue working on this channel, and that's just how YouTube algorithm works. So, I mean, I have to play by the rules. And if you want to get more tips in the future, consider subscribing. My name is Julius, this is Analytics Mania, and I will see you in the next video.